In the country music songs, they say sometimes you're the bug and sometimes you're the windshield. In the NBA, I just say last night the Jazz might have been a prop. It's next on Locked on Jazz.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps and on YouTube, and there's a new free daily newsletter which today gives you the exclusive Emptying the Noggin is back. It's where I bullet point all my thoughts right after a ball game, kind of in a nonsensical, weird way, but you can get it exclusively at the Locked on Jazz newsletter. So go to lockedondaily.com and subscribe. On today's show, we're going to look and see whether the Jazz held their stylistic changes they made against Chicago and Denver that we've talked about all week, that the everydayers here on the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day, are aware of. We're going to look at transition and how dreadful our transition, well, actually our offenses that led to bad defense. We'll look at, some of our shot quality last night. Rotation was a big conversation in the press conference afterwards, so we'll touch on that. And we'll start it off today talking about the threes and where we were. However, first, I think we have to have just an honest moment about what I think happened last night. You can get in the middle of that game. You get super competitive. You're into it as a play-by-play announcer. You're fired up about it. You're as a fan, you're going hard. And I did all the analysis and all of it, and then I did empty the noggin, and I just came back and rewatched all the threes, and I rewatched all the turnovers, and I listened to Will Hardy, and then it dawned on me. And by the way, today's show is brought to you in part by Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to win $50 instantly when you get your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And what it dawned on me is sometimes you're a prop. And what I mean by that is that the Utah Jazz, who are not trying to win a championship, whose purpose of this season is to develop 7 young players, or see what you have out of 7 young players and develop those that are developable. Is that a word? And the Milwaukee Bucks is to win a championship. I don't think they can, but that's their goal. And they're 1-6 at home, heading to New York the next day with Boston the game after that. They know perfectly well if they lose last night, they're on the verge of 1-9. Giannis is coming back from an injury. We were a prop. The Bucks came into the game like 26th in the league defensively last night. I think that's the number. I can find the exact number for you. And they came out physical. Our first 2 handoffs, which Walker didn't execute very well, they blew up. They were swiping at the ball. They were last in the league at turnovers, and they were pretty actively getting after the ball. That's a team that came out last night having Giannis is a champion, Bobby Portis is a champion, Brook Lopez is a champion, Pat Connaughton's a champion, and came out last night and were like, oh, we cannot lose tonight. We are physically better than them. We are more experienced than they are. If you're drafting players in that, you're taking Giannis first and Dame second and Brook Lopez third. And like Torian Prince and those guys are pretty good for that team. They came out and offensive and a starting lineup changed, putting Andre Jackson in the starting lineup because Gary Trent was so bad defensively was a message. So let's just get that first. There are nights this year where we are as a franchise, we're just going to, you got to take it. You can't, so I thought there were a lot of really good things the Jazz did last night. And I thought and there's some terrible things. The turnovers are just, the amount of turnovers that led to the amount of transition is not great. It just makes it impossible to win, but it also makes it impossible to stay in a game, which is maybe more important. But from a big picture standpoint, before you're we were the windshield, or we were the bug. They were the windshield. So let's get to some of the good stuff. The first half, we go 14 of 28 on threes. The 28 threes, I went and watched it. Sexton squeezes off some late in the shot clock where he's got a mismatch with Brook Lopez, and he pulls. And Jordan Clarkson takes a few threes. They're just Jordan Clarkson threes. He's 0 for 3, and then he hits his next three, and there's one or two in there that, like, I'm cringing. But otherwise, those are really good natural looks. The first play of the game was a pin down for Cody Williams at the top. A lot of taking advantage of Dame, which is exactly what you got to do. He's a really slow closeout player. Patty Mills got one off him. A few other guys did. Lowry marking changes everything. Having Lowry on the floor for the pick and roll last night, he pops, he's open for three, it opens up lanes. It does a lot of different things for the offense that we have watched had struggled miserably until the Chicago game. And in fact, last night, it's a little hard to try to figure out how to evaluate last night, like from the different standpoints of the game. Like, my quick take would be that the offense was actually better than the defense last night. But then I dig into this is where I actually think the whole idea of these offensive and defensive coordinators on staffs is ridiculous. So on one level, I thought the offense was better than the defense last night. And then on the other end, it's like, well, wait a sec. By the end of the night, we had turned the ball over 24 times, allowed 30-plus transition opportunities. The Milwaukee was in transition 34% of the time. So the offense absolutely committed Harry Carey to the defense. So it's a kind of mix-match thing. But I thought that really in the first half, offensively, Milwaukee overshifts a great deal. And the Jazz really recognized it well. They forced the shift, and then they moved the ball, and it led to 28 threes, which I kind of had down like 22 of them were really the right play, the right look, the right approach. That is pretty exciting. In the third quarter, we said they go 1 of 9. Well, okay, first of all, we went 14 of 28. We're not shooting 50%. So some of this is just the leveling out of the numbers. The other thing was I actually didn't think those threes were terrible. They felt a little quicker, but I didn't think those threes were terrible. Our shot quality starts to dissolve as the night goes on. We start to get a little less good shots as the night goes on. And frankly, Milwaukee's shot quality is through the roof last night because they were in transition for 34% of the time. And they on the rim. I mean, if they had an average shooting day, they shoot 55% effective field goal percentage. You just can't beat that. So overall, I thought we really saw some really, really good things in that. Now, let me get to the turnovers because I then also, for the fun of it, watched every single turnover for the fun of it. Walker has 2 bad turnovers earlier. He's just not firm and strong. And the physicality of the Bucks, this is where I kind of felt like we were the bug, not the windshield. They came out, they pushed Walker off of their reach around. They saw the handoff game. We'd run the 89 or the 58 handoffs against Chicago that we talked about yesterday on the show if you're an everydayer. And they clearly came ready to do that. Jackson blows one up where he doesn't let Sexton get to it. Lopez is reaching around to get to another one. And we turned it over early, and then Walker can't handle a pass in the middle of the lane for his third turnover early. So the physicality of them is dictating the turnovers early in this game. But as the night goes on, I actually think, interestingly, it's Jordan Clarkson and John Collins, as much as anyone, who are taking extra dribbles into traffic and leaving themselves very little space to get rid of the basketball. And I'm not saying this to be super critical, but it's not just the youth. Now, I do think it's an impact of like who they're on the floor with. I think Jordan and John are coming into games right now and thinking to themselves like, wow, looking around, I've got to score, right? That's what John did against Chicago and did it really, really well. And Chicago's, a terrible team. I think Chicago's really lucky to not be 1-9, frankly, or 1-8, or maybe even 0-and, having watched them and prepped for them. They have not led after, I think, unless they did last night, they had not led after first quarter all year. We've only led after 1 or 2, but we kind of know who we are. So I thought that John and Jordan are the ones kind of getting themselves caught into trouble. Jordan does a few dribble things and loses it. That happened late in the quarter where he's trying to get a shot off. But John gets into the baseline and tries to throw it back out, and it gets taken away on the baseline drive, or John does have the ability, like if he gets some space and he gets in there and he can do that jump hook and score. And so I understand what he's trying to do. And Jordan, a little bit, I think the same thing, but this is an overshifting Bucks defense. And the thing about an overshifting Bucks defense is in the first half, they made the pass before the overshift makes its impact. But then if you take one more dribble or one more quest to score and the defense, now the overshift is on you, now you got 2 and 3 guys on top of you, and it's hard to get rid of it. And that makes it a really difficult moment. And that's where the turnovers kind of spike into things. And it's interesting to me that I'm watching this and I didn't see like the turnovers being Keontae or Cody or some of that stuff. That I don't know if that's good or bad, but the narrative is going to be, well, we turn it over a lot because we're young. I think we turn it over a lot because we have guys who are feeling a burden to try to do stuff that's beyond their natural capability. And I think it would be better off if they tried to trust their teammates and get out of those situations. That's my quick thought on that. Stylistically, we made these big changes in Denver and in Milwaukee. Did they Jazz hold to them, or did Will Hardy adapt midway through the game? We'll talk about that coming up here as we continue on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by my friends over at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The Murdochs have been in Utah for 80 plus years. They want to make sure you have the no regrets experience, and they want to make sure that you are have a walk around. You know, I remember during the pandemic when everyone was increasing prices on cars, and I talked to Blake. He's like, I'm not doing it. And I was like, why? He's like, because I'm going to be at the grocery store. I'm going to be at church. I'm going to be with these people. And I don't want to be walking around having them say, oh, there's the guy that gouged me for $1,500 or $2,000 in the midst of a pandemic. It's kind of who they are. And then the Hyundai car, it's really fabulous. The Santa Fe, the new one, is sporty. I've been driving the Palisade, loving every second of it. And you've got this iconic 5 and 6 electric cars that have won every award imaginable, and I own the 5, and it's been great for us. So it's all at Murdoch Hyundai at 4646 South State Street in Logan and in Linden. If you're going to stop by, please email me first at dlock09@gmail.com so that we can get you your VIP experience. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. That's right, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, Prize Picks, where you can pick more or less of at least 2 players to a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. That's right. It's the best place to get real money sports action. Over 10 million subscribers and billions of dollars in award-winning Prize Picks is make your daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long at Prize Picks. Prize Picks has got a great deal for you going on right now for you as well. Here's the deal. Download the app and use the code LOCKEDONNBA, and you get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's you. Download the app, Prize Picks. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after your first $5 bet. So, Prize Picks. Run your game. Take advantage of this great deal going on right now at prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Appreciate it. Locked On Daily to get your newsletter. Knicks and the Mavericks are still ahead of me. They're stretching out a little bit, actually. Cannot have that. All right, so did the Jazz continue with their new style of handoff and off-ball? Off-ball screens is not new. That we ran the second most off-ball screens to the Warriors last year. So against the Bulls, we ran 58 handoffs. It was the most against any team in any game all season long. Last night, we ran 37. So we dropped back a little bit. And we didn't have a lot of success with it. That's clearly was something that the Bucks came out ready to handle. They forced some turnovers off it. They were blowing it up. We did not have the same kind of overall success on that. On our 37 handoffs, we averaged 0.81 points. So that was not great. Off-ball screens, which is kind of our staple, we went from 89 to 73. 73 is still a lot. So that it was still very much the staple of our offense. It got us a lot of those early looks and a lot of our offense off the off-ball screens. And we threw a lot of passes last night. We threw 361 passes, which is the second most amount of passes we've thrown in any game. So a lot of the style that we talked about in the last game still held and led to getting a lot of good open looks. So that's like when you hear Will Hardy in the post-game press conference say, hey, I saw a lot of things that are making us get better. I think that's what he's talking about. The other thing that happened last night that was interesting is the pick and roll game by the Jazz has really scuffled this year. It has not, I think it, depends what notes I have in front of me. Our pick and roll game coming in last night overall was 27th in the league. Our pick and roll handler was 27th in the league, and our pick and roll man was 25th in the league. So that has been, that's been a problem for us. A lot of that's because Lowry has was not involved recently. And when we don't, when we struggle as a offense, it's largely because of the fact that we don't have Lowry marketing. Last night, the Jazz had some real pick and roll success, and Lowry popping out, Keontae George Lowry pick and roll, Colin Lowry pick and roll. There was some stuff last night that they kind of, it felt natural last night on some of our picks. We didn't run a huge amount of them. In fact, I think it was one of our lower numbers, but it was our third best offensive pick and roll game of the season. Again, we're not going to be a high pick and roll team. I think we run 56 or 53 picks a game, which is 26th in the NBA. So we're just not, that's not our bread and butter. It's not the kind of way Will wants to play. So we're not necessarily a pick and roll team on the offensive side. But last night we did have some success, a little bit more success than we've had throughout the year. And that I think was because Lowry was back. The one that's interesting about us right now from a pick and roll standpoint is how good we are on the pick and roll. I haven't guarded a pick and roll yet all season. How good the Jazz are on the pick and roll defense. They really have done a marvelous job here. The Jazz came in last night, and this is a credit to Walker and some scheme things that Scott Morrison and the staff have been putting in. The Jazz are the fifth best pick and roll defensive team in the NBA right now, which I think, when you start to kind of think about that, that's pretty great. And what the coaching staff keeps talking about is that they want to be able to build models and foundations for when this team becomes better. They had another good night last night. They've, really the Warrior game, who do not run many pick and rolls only unless they have an opportunity, and the Spurs game are the only two times where I'd say the pick and roll defense was not particularly good. It was great against Dallas. That was one of our best defensive games of the year, and then we, eventually fell apart in that one. But last night was pretty solid. When you have Dame Lillard, who's a pretty good pick and roll player, the Jazz did a nice job last night in pick and roll defense again. So this is like, we are seeing signs of Will Hardy getting this team better. And as I kind of open the show tonight, 1-6 Jazz, 1-6 Bucks, Giannis back, like that one just, and you felt it, which gets us to Giannis. He's really just incredible. Like, there are very few players in the world that are like him. You certainly can talk about his inability to make an outside shot or his questionable free throw shooting if you want to nitpick. On the other end, this dude has now been in the top 4 in the MVP voting for 4 years in a row. I thought Will Hardy's comment pre-game about his relentlessness and how relentless Giannis is on you throughout the whole game, that you're just going to get hit time and time, physically relentless. And so you might guard him for 4 or 5 possessions, and then here it comes again, still coming downhill at you one more time. And you're just like, oh my God, no, please stop. And I didn't actually think I saw the please stop from the Jazz. I thought the Jazz guarded him in the half court really well. I thought Walker had some good defensive possessions against him. He stopped him on back-to-back times. But the kid's just relentless. He had 6 offensive rebounds. If you start to go put together Giannis' 30-plus points last night, so many of them are in transition off our turnovers, and then 6 of them are off, I think, offense. I think he had 10 or 12 second chance points last night. And so that's, we really did defend him pretty well in the half court. And Giannis is incredible. His footwork is just world class. And he's just learned this, and he's so long, and he's so agile, and he's just so gifted. Like, it's easy to say, well, 84% of his shots are rims or layups or dunks, and that's all he does. But he's got to get there when the whole world knows he's going to get there every single play. And he does it if you watch it in person, the appreciation you have for the footwork and the understanding of angles. There was a play I thought was really cool. He comes full steam ahead, fast break, and the Jazz build the wall. It's like Eubanks, Mills, somebody else. It's a really good wall of players by the Jazz. And so he sees it, and he stops, and he backs up like 3 steps, and the wall does this. It spreads out because these guys are all like, oh, well, we stopped Giannis, and so now let's go back out to our man. And the minute everyone spread out, pow, right through the crease and onto the rim. Like, the wall, you can't for 1 second let it go. And he's just that relentless and that great, and that's why they win 50-plus games, seemingly, if they have Giannis on the team. It's why they're a title contender if they have Giannis. It's a travesty if that roster is still what it is. Right now, when they take one of those 2 guys, Dame or Giannis, off the floor, they really fall apart. And it's too bad that, I don't know all the things that they should have done. Obviously, the Chris Middleton injury is killing them. Brook Lopez is getting older. He's still really, really good. It's just too bad they don't have other pieces there so that Giannis can have his full activity and maximize what he's doing. All right, I have 3 things for you before we're done. There were some player rotation things that changed. There were some really interesting questions in the post press conference to Will Hardy. It's not the one I would have asked, but it was interesting. And I have a quandary offensively of what a team like the Jazz are supposed to do, whether they should shoot the pigeon or work on fundamentals. I'll explain when we come back on continue on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. It is also Locked On's official sportsbook. FanDuel, your #1 sportsbook, and right now, new customers get $5, get $150 in bonus bets. Let me say that again so it makes sense. New customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. So you take a $5 bet, you're certain you're going to win. Go find it. You get $150 in bonus bets once you do win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, or the NBA. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you get all your bets. Visit FanDuel.com today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets, and if you win your first $5 bet, that's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook of the NFL. This is going to be TMI because this is an underwear ad. And if you watched the show yesterday and you're an everydayer, which you're probably at this point wishing you weren't when I'm going to get this personal with you, I shared with you what underwear I was going to wear yesterday for a day in which I was going to be on a bus for 2 hours, call a game for 3 hours, then be on a plane and a bus for another hour, and then on a plane for hours, because that's the underwear I needed that was going to be the most comfortable. And that's why I went to my brand new pair of Skims underwear. It fits well. I am a boxer brief guy, so I had the 5-inch boxer brief, and the synthetic feeling felt like workout underwear that was like not going to give me like a wedgie or something as the day went on, but at the same time did not feel like it was uncomfortably tight, and it was the correct choice. So that is probably TMI, but Skims, which my wife and many other people have loved, now makes men's underwear. So shop Skims Men's at Skims, SKIMS.com, and let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu. And if you're looking for the perfect gift for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever. It's also available at skims.com. So go check it out, whether it's the cotton brief, whether the 3-inch boxer brief, the 5-inch boxer brief I had yesterday, or the cotton 3-inch boxer brief. It is all at Skims. Check it out. Skims Menwear now available for you. Just like my wife was jealous when I got my delivery of Skims. And that's like the only time that ever happens. It's all at Skims. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Locked On NBA. I loved it yesterday. I listened to both episodes. It was perfect. So catch that next. All right. So I thought this was interesting last night. Milwaukee has 2 terrible defenders in Damian Lillard and Gary Trent. They're both averaging 1.4 in ISO. And the New York Knicks are going to pull both those into every play, and the Boston Celtics are going to pull them into every play. It's why Doc Rivers had to get Gary Trent out of the starting lineup, because you can't have 2 of them in your starting lineup defensively or you'll get torched. You'll be 26 in the league defensively. So that's a smart move by Doc. New York and Boston in the next 2 games are going to isolate Dame Lillard and Gary Trent Jr. as much as they possibly can. And we didn't do it. One, they were able to hide Dame on Cody Williams because of the fact that Cody Williams can't beat you one-on-one, and because they didn't have 2 bad defensive players on the game. Really, we would have had to break all of our schemes and go hunt Dame. I thought we did a nice job of getting Dame involved. We hit a bunch of threes off-ball screens when Dame doesn't like that screen, and so he's trailing pretty far, and we took advantage of it. And we did as many things as you could in different manners, staying inside the structure of our offense. But I think it's a really interesting debate of whether the Jazz should go into a given game and try to hunt the pigeon. The pigeon is the bad defensive player. If you think about it as like you're at the shooting range and you go get the pigeon and pull. That's what we're doing when you try to find the bad defensive player. You find the pigeon, get him, pull, go to work. And The question is whether or not the Jazz should be shooting in the pigeon, or whether it's more important for the Jazz to stay in their style and run their offense the way they did. And I thought last night they sided on the side of running their offense, doing their things, and not turning the night into an isolation hunting playoff game. I like that. But it's an interesting question because I do think you have a better chance to win the given night in the short term if you go shoot the pigeon a few more times. But I think in the long term, you're trying to build structure and offense and teach guys how to go get the pigeon in the flow of your offense is a probably better long-term thing. So it's an interesting question. I don't think it's one I would ask in a press conference, but I might talk to Will off the record and see if I can find something else for you on that. I thought there were a few interesting things in who played last night. The post-game press conference, Sarah Todd and Andy Larson were talking a lot about Drew Eubanks over Kyle Filipowski and Patty Mills over Isaiah Collier. I thought the most interesting one is that Johnny Juzang seemed to take Bryce Sensabaugh's spot. I don't know if that was for the night or just a tribute to how hard Johnny's worked and how well he's shooting, and the thumb is better. His thumb has been a real problem. He's literally walking around in a brace when he's not playing. So he's battling. And I thought that was the most interesting. That, here's Johnny, who's actually kind of the same age as some of these guys, who has worked so hard and evolved his game into being a quick release three-point shooter and is clearly doing things that made you feel comfortable having him guard Dame Lillard, though he did foul him twice on three-point shots. And that he just popped over Bryce, who's having a little bit of a turnover problem, and I think some defensive issues in the lineup. I thought that was interesting. I was not stunned that Drew Eubanks stayed in the rotation over Kyle Filipowski. Two things. One, Drew Eubanks is super fundamental, does things exactly right, and allows things to run correctly for everybody else. And one of the hard things with young guys is you actually often have them running kind of willy-nilly. Now, Kyle's pretty smart, so he probably is not in that niche, but like you do, it is important to have guys play correctly. And John Collins is playing pretty well at the 4 right now, and Eubanks plays the 5. And John just came off his best game of the year playing the 4 offensively. And so Eubanks slides in. And this does not surprise me. If you go back and listen to our early season shows, I kind of thought this was going to happen. I had talked about this earlier in the year that I thought eventually the rotation would get to the point where Eubanks is the backup center, John is the 4. And then if Jordan Clarkson, I actually thought we'd get to a point where Jordan, and maybe we still will, where Jordan doesn't play every night. On nights when Jordan plays, and on nights when Jordan doesn't play, then Bryce Sensabaugh or one of the other guys gets some of those minutes, and that's how you're continuing to develop your 7 young players, and that Jordan at 30 whatever years old is not burdened by playing every single night of the season. Now, I don't know whether Jordan's up for that, but that was kind of my guess on how this was going to play out, because we started the year, remember, it was Collier, Clarkson, Cody Williams, Bryce Sensabaugh, and John Collins. And I said I didn't think that lineup was sustainable. I thought that Drew Eubanks was going to have to step in, and then it would be Collier, Cody Williams, Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, and Drew Eubanks. And then I thought Bryce Sensabaugh or Jordan Clarkson might play certain nights. It looks like Juzang might have popped over Sensabaugh in that right now, at least for the time being. So that's worth noting. Tribute to Johnny. The other thing I think is clear in this conversation is that right now the coaches really see Kyle Filipowski as a 4, which I think is a really good development for his long term. Now, when Lowry's back, that means there's less minutes available. But my concern when I evaluated Kyle out of college was I saw him as a 5, and I didn't think he could defensively play the 5. I thought actually he got very similar to John Collins in that he was an really good offensive 5, but not a very good defensive 5, and vice versa the other way around with being a 4. But if they see him as a 4, and I think he has moved his feet and played well enough defensively at times that they have some comfort level with him playing 4, because 4s end up having to switch on guards defensively, and they don't have to rim protect quite as much. That's a really good sign for Kyle's development, because that means he's got multiple routes onto the floor to be able to play. So I thought that was an interesting sign there. Collier just hasn't played enough right now. And Patty Mills, again, is someone who's just playing hard, playing right, giving everything some structure. Like, you can go put out all the young kids. You will just get your head beaten in on given nights. Last night, we got our head beaten in by the 4th quarter. That would have happened a lot earlier because that team was rearing and ready to do that last night. Last note I would have for you on today's show, I actually think if we dug into it that the half-court defense last night was pretty good. And that continues a season-long trend. We're good against the pick and roll. We're 14th ranked defensive team in the half court. I just think the 29 transition opportunities at about 1.4 points per and 8 transition threes is a disaster. And you cannot survive doing that in the NBA, allowing an opponent to play 33% of their possessions in transition. So I think that overrides all things, and you certainly can't allow Giannis's team to play 33% of his possessions in transition. But I think if you dig deep into this, you'll see from last night some really good offense that led to 28 3 attempts, some really good structure on how to play the game offensively, a adaptation of a little bit more pick and roll with Lowry back that showed some more versatility to an offense that has added versatility, and I think you saw pretty good half-court defense. So not bad. All right, Spurs on Saturday. Monday, I'll be back with you. I think we're home next week until we go on another road trip, right? I think we're home Monday, Tuesday, or Tuesday. What? Honestly, I got no idea. This trip has gotten long. Have a great one. The NBA 24/7 channel is up and running. So make sure you grab that. If you have not followed me on Twitter, it's it's DLock09. On Instagram as well, please do. If you have not subscribed or followed our program, please subscribe to Locked On Jazz on YouTube or on whatever app you're listening to right now. If you're on YouTube, hit that bell button. Greatly appreciate it. And the newsletter is out daily, and it's free. It also includes a national article from Katie Heindel and Mike Shearer. It includes Josh Lloyd's fantasy tips. It's absolutely fabulous. It's all for free. It's the one-stop ultimate NBA newsletter, so get it at LockedOnDaily.com. Now, if you're on video, we'll send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA channel, Locked On NBA, on YouTube, and on audio. I suggest you check out Locked On NBA.